If you don't know the blues, you can't play rock and roll. You make pop music, and there's nothing wrong with pop music. You ain't going to be able to play rock and roll if you don't know your blues.
Music isn't random, you don't get a gold medal. You get gold records now and again, but...
Keith Richards never learned to play clean. He learned to play human. While guitarists around him chased technical perfection and polished solos, Richards kept the dirt under his fingernails, the rasp in his throat, the spaces between notes where the real music lived. His riffs wandered and stumbled and caught fire in ways that perfect playing never could. He didn't want to impress anyone. He wanted to move them, scare them, remind them that rock and roll was born in the mud and ought to stay there.
You go back down the way.
The albums Richards loved weren't the celebrated masterworks everyone agreed upon. They were the ones that sweated, recorded in basements and Louisiana swamps where the walls remembered every hard story ever told. These 10 albums taught him that mistakes were holy, that groove mattered more than flash, that the best music came from the heart and the hips, not the head. If you love stories about the masters who built rock and roll, hit subscribe and tell us in the comments which of these albums you discovered first. Let's begin with number 10. 10. Rubber Soul by the Beatles.
It seemed to be like you're either, this Beatles fan or a Stones fan, like never the twain would meet. Bullshit. We are so similar, it's not true.
When the Beatles released Rubber Soul in December 1965, Keith Richards heard a declaration of war, not the hostile kind, but the creative kind that makes you want to write better songs, take more chances, and stop settling for what worked before. Richards respected the Beatles enormously, but this album forced the Stones to rethink what an album could be. No filler, every song considered, every arrangement intentional. It arrived during rock's first great creative arms race. Richards and Jagger were still chasing American blues authenticity, still learning how to translate Chicago into London. Then Rubber Soul landed with its folk rock textures, literary lyrics, and refusal to waste a single track. On Norwegian Wood, George Harrison's sitar introduced sounds rock hadn't absorbed yet. On In My Life, Lennon wrote autobiography that felt universal. On Nowhere Man, they stepped away from boy meets girl and into something stranger, darker, more honest. Richards took the challenge without resentment. "There's not a lot of difference between us musically," he told Rolling Stone years later. "We were the blues band and they were the pop band, but we all came from the same records." Rubber Soul proved that shared roots could grow in unexpected directions. The Beatles were still grounded in the songs, but they'd raised the stakes for what a rock album should attempt. The influence was immediate. Within months of its release, the Stones recorded Aftermath, their first album of entirely original material. Richards later admitted the Beatles' ambition pushed them to stop hiding behind covers and trust their own songwriting. "We all nicked a bit from each other," he said in a BBC interview, and Rubber Soul was the album worth nicking from. It showed you could evolve without losing your soul, experiment without losing the groove, and make every song matter. 9. Ogden's Nut Gone Flake by Small Faces. Steve Marriott was a bloody genius, and Keith Richards never stopped saying so. When Small Faces released Ogden's Nut Gone Flake in May 1968, they proved British rock could rival American soul for grit and emotion. The album topped the UK charts for 6 weeks, but for Richards, the real triumph was how it got psychedelic without losing its punch. Marriott's voice was the key, full of character, dripping with soul, never polite. The record came in a round sleeve shaped like a tobacco tin, the first of its kind, but the real magic was inside. Side 1 delivered raw, soulful rock. Afterglow had Marriott wailing like Otis Redding meets James Brown. Song of a Baker rose from folk to hard rock prophecy, and Lazy Sunday mixed humor with real craft. These weren't polished studio takes. They were rough, alive, human. Richards rated Small Faces above their louder peers. "I didn't care for the excess, the overplaying," he said. Marriott never lost sight of the song. While Zeppelin and The Who chased volume and spectacle, Marriott stayed grounded in rhythm and blues, the same roots Richards trusted. "People go on about Zeppelin and The Who," he said, "but for me it was Marriott every time. He could sing those blokes under the table." What set Small Faces apart was restraint. Every player served the song. McLagan's organ pulsed without flash. Jones's drums hit hard but clean. Lane's bass kept the groove steady. Richards heard what he valued most: authenticity over grandeur, feel over show. Ogden's Nut Gone Flake became his benchmark for honest British rock, and it never left him. 8. King of the Delta Blues Singers by Robert Johnson.
Musically, I found him through Chuck Berry, back to Muddy Waters, and from Muddy Waters to Robert. There's the man.
When Keith Richards first heard King of the Delta Blues Singers, he thought there had to be 2 or 3 guitarists playing. But it was just one man, Robert Johnson, a voice that sounded possessed, and a guitar that carried bass, rhythm, and melody all at once. It was almost Bach-like, Richards said. The structure, the movement, it shouldn't have been possible. Recorded in a Texas hotel room in 1936, these songs still feel alive, even dangerous. Johnson didn't just sing about the devil. He sang like someone who'd met him. For Richards, it was revelation. You didn't need a band, or perfection, or polish. You needed conviction. Johnson gave him permission to be strange, dark, and fearless, to chase truth instead of beauty. Richards said, "He was a shooting star there for a moment, but bright enough to light up everything." From that day on, his philosophy was set in stone. Play what's true, not what's perfect. Let the rough edges speak. The raw take always wins. 7. Lady Day by Billie Holiday. Keith Richards' mother gave him Lady Day before he even knew the blues. In Billie Holiday's voice, he heard the guitar he wanted to play. She didn't sing pretty, she sang true. On Easy Living and I Must Have That Man, she bent time, letting silence carry emotion. Nothing was just notes, Richards said. Holiday taught him restraint, the courage to hold back. You can hear her ghost in Wild Horses and Angie, where notes hang and decay. She showed him that cracks and hesitation can hit harder than perfection. The real soul lives between the notes. 6. Music from Big Pink by the band. When Music from Big Pink dropped in 1968, Richards found his compass. The band reminded him why music existed, not for fame, but for feel. Those guys were like a jukebox of all American music, he said. Blues, country, gospel, all fused into one sound. What struck him most was their democracy. No frontman, no ego, just 5 players moving as one. A drummer who could sing like that, Richards said of Levon Helm. Rare. Whenever the Stones drifted too far, he'd play Big Pink. It reminded him, no tricks, no show. Just musicians listening to each other. 5. A Date with Elvis by Elvis Presley. Released in 1959, A Date with Elvis was a throwaway to most, but Richards heard a masterclass in minimalism. Scotty Moore's guitar used 6 notes per verse yet commanded total authority. The best meal with the fewest ingredients, Richards said. On Milk Cow Blues, Boogie, and Baby Let's Play House, every note breathed no overplaying, just groove and confidence. Moore taught Richards that silence could shout louder than sound. The opening lick of Honky Tonk Women, 3 notes, total conviction came straight from Elvis's trio. Say it once, mean it. 4. The Chirping Crickets by Buddy Holly. When Buddy Holly released The Chirping Crickets in 1957, he handed rock musicians their freedom. 3 chords, a backbeat. Honesty, that's all you needed. Richards found it after Holly's death and heard a new world open. Not fade away. Oh boy. Maybe baby. No frills. Just fearless joy. I remember talking to Lennon and McCartney about Buddy, he said. He made songwriting feel possible. When Richards and Jagger began writing, they followed Holly's blueprint. Keep it simple. Trust the riff. Don't fake it. Holly taught him the core truth of rock, feel beats technique, every time. 3. McKinley Morganfield, Muddy Waters. The first time Brian Jones played Muddy Waters for him, Richards heard his future. Muddy's electric blues was architecture, the blueprint for every Stones riff. Hoochie Coochie Man, Manish Boy, Got My Mojo Working. These were statements of power, 2 guitars weaving, leaving space as the secret weapon. What I learned from Muddy, Richards said, is that nothing comes from itself. Richards built his entire guitar style on that tension. 2 guitars never duplicating, always talking. That's Brown Sugar, that's Start Me Up. Muddy taught him that restraint was power, leave space, and the song breathes. 2. Hate to See You Go by Little Walter. Little Walter's Hate to See You Go hit Richards like a revelation. Here was the missing link, how a band breathes as one. Walter's harmonica led, then stepped back. Guitars answered, drums replied. You can't write blues on paper, Richards said. You have to feel it. On Duke and My Babe, the rhythm section locked so tight it sounded telepathic. That call and response became the Stones' DNA, two guitars speaking, not shouting. From Sympathy for the Devil to Jumpin' Jack Flash, it's Walter's conversation reborn. Great music isn't a solo, it's a dialogue. 1. Raining in My Heart by Slim Harpo. Slim Harpo's Raining in My Heart was swamp blues at its purest, slow, humid, dangerous. You can almost smell the swamp, Richards said. Harpo's voice barely rose above a whisper, his harmonica buzzing like an insect. I'm a king bee. Crawled with hypnotic patience, one chord, infinite feel. It taught Richards that less is more, and slow can be deadly. Paint It Black. Midnight Rambler. That swampy pulse came straight from Louisiana. These sessions were raw and real, no flash, just groove. Richards carried that for life. Groove over perfection, sweat over polish. Real music breathes.